what do you mean there's no foundation? He goes, Mark, there's no foundation. Nothing. Sometimes you go into a project and you think you know what you're getting into, and then something pops up that just blows your mind financially. Or you find out that maybe the zoning you thought that you were going to get, you didn't get, or the house is too close to the property line and they want you to move it, or some crazy stuff like that. But probably the worst one was in Watts, and this was probably 5 years ago. So when we first started, we were doing Watts in Compton a lot, because the once you get in an area, you kind of stick to it for a while. And then we were doing well there. We would buy lower cost houses and do a really good job on them and flip them. And we were keeping about every fourth one. This house was a smoking hot deal. It's in Watts. It's in a less than desirable area, but that little part of the street was really close knit. You know, I got to know all the neighbors and everything. Really close to the school, so people like that. So I thought, man, when I saw it, I went, yeah, this is it. And it was actually not in horrible shape. I mean, it needed a full rehab, but it was not horrible. And it wasn't like tearing out all the drywall. We actually were able to use a lot of the stuff that was there. And so we went in there, closed escrow on it, got it for, I think like $100,000. It was crazy. And brought Emmanuel over, my present and popular and proficient contractor. And I'm a contractor, I should have caught this. And he crawled under the house because I said, yeah, let's check the plumbing out. I want to make sure that we're good. I've got enough money in the deal to replace it if we have to. If we don't, then let's not. And so he crawls under and he comes out. First thing he says is, Mark, there was another bathroom here. And I said, really? Because it was a 3-bedroom, 1 bath. And I said, that's interesting, because there was a big closet in the master. And so I said, well, we're going to look into that. And he said, another thing I noticed, he goes, did you crawl under the house? And I said, well, I just kind of looked through the crawl space and that was it. And he goes, there's no foundation on this house. And I said, what do you mean there's no foundation? He goes, Mark, there's no foundation. Nothing. It's red bricks all the way around, which was kind of popular in LA at a time. The building criteria was really, really loose back then. You'd get a permit for a house and it'd be handwritten. Of course, there was no computers. It'd be handwritten, 12 by 16 foot structure with a 12 by 12 footing with 2 by 4 walls. And that was it. That would be the description of the house. And this one didn't have a footing description. When I, in retrospect, went to the city to see what the permits were, there was never even a footing called out on the house. So that was quite embarrassing, because my wife is my partner and she trusts me to pick houses because I am an expert. I've been building houses all my life, and I bought a house without a foundation. So we ended up keeping that house because I didn't want to have to disclose to people that there was no foundation. And so we ended up keeping it, renting it out for a while, and ended up being a great investment after all. But I remember having to drive back to, at the time, another office we were at, and telling her it's going to cost about $20,000 to replace the foundation that I didn't think we had to do. And that was, I remember driving all the way back from LA in traffic knowing that I had to have that conversation with her. And it was a most uncomfortable time. The upside was, though, I went to the city that day when he told me that. I went to the city to go check permits, found out, there was no foundation, but the house was permitted with 2 bathrooms. So they had just taken one out. So before I decided right then and there, I'm not going to put the bathroom back in now because we're going to rent it out. I'd made that decision that day, a lot of decisions that day. And before we sold it, we put the bathroom back in. And I disclosed that there was a brick foundation, and the people didn't care because I gave them such a good deal on the house. So prices had inflated enough at that point where it wasn't a big deal. And I think we ended up getting a 6-unit apartment complex as our 1031 exchange for that particular house. So everything ended up great. Moral of the story is even if you screw up in real estate, given enough time, unless it's a toxic waste dump or something crazy like that, you can usually recoup your money. You know, a lot of times, this be redundant, a lot of times heal what mistakes you've made earlier, just through appreciation, depreciation, rents going up. A lot of different factors will actually get you out of that hole. So that was one of the toughest conversations I had to have with my wife. There's a few more. We'll go over that later, but that was one of the tougher ones. Telling her, number one, we had a $20,000 foundation that had to be replaced, and number two, the flip money that we were counting on was not going to be coming in. It would be a rental, and we weren't expecting to make that a rental at the time.